because of the level of commitment I had as the Commissioner for Reconstruction, Rehabilitation and Resettlement. The only way we can fight insecurity is for us to become resilient enough. If you are not resilient enough, you cannot provide security. And the issue of good governance is the critical thing, both at the national as well as the sub-national government. No matter how strong the national government is, if the sub-national government are also not doing well, you can get rid of it. The local governments and the traditional institutions are also very important. Why are the local governments now? Are they functioning very well? We need to ask such questions. What are the roles of the traditional rulers in our own constitution? So the few remarks that I want to make is that as we are now coming closer to the 2023 election, for me, it's not important. Honestly speaking, it's not important. I'm not looking for any position. I never dreamt to be the governor of Borno State. And I'm not willing to aspire to any higher position. But as a Muslim, I should always pray for the best. What we should look into, we have to look into the possibility of selecting good leaders, whether we like it or wrong. How? That remains a very big question. Whether in PDP, whether in APC, I think we need to see how we can get good leaders. Can we now copy the China model? China model of election is selection versus election based on competences model. Can we sit down and select those people that are competent enough to rule Nigeria in both political parties, irrespective of their inclination, so that the opportunities could be given to them, for them to rule this nation? Otherwise, we allow tribalism, nepotism, among others, to talk over what we need to do in real sense. That will be another problem. We should have to work together as an indivisible element to move forward. I'm very happy to hear from the former head of state. We have to come together. What matters is the future of Nigeria. We have to think about sustainable development. Our major problem is that we are not working towards sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that takes into consideration the future. That's remained our major problem. Before then, in the last 20 years or 30 years, what is the population of Nigeria? The population of Nigeria is growing in a quick geometrical ratio. And therefore, government should do something to ensure that infrastructures are provided, that are to be provided, should take care of the future development. Now, population has grown, and the numbers of schools are inadequate because of improper planning. Employment opportunities are not there because everybody is looking for white-collar jobs. Our graduates are not employable because what we were taught in the universities are no more relevant enough to provide gainful employment, because the type of equipment that we have in our universities are obsolete enough. How can we move forward? I'm much younger than most of the politicians in Nigeria. My prayer is that we should put heads together to move the country forward, not to the benefit of our selfish, not to our selfish interests, but for the benefit of the future. On this remark, I wish to express my profound gratitude to the organizers of this event for giving me this small opportunity to express my sincere view about politics, insecurity, and development and economy in Nigeria. The nexus between peace, security, and development cannot be overemphasized. While we are trying to address the problem of insecurity, we have to look into some key issues, which is this socio-political dimensions of this crisis has to be addressed first and foremost before getting rid of the problem. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Another round of applause, please, for His Excellency. Thank you so much. Listening to him there talking about the issues of education, climate change, etc., I thought I should share with you a little statistic. 80% of men in Yobe and about 60% of men in Borno have not had any formal education. And developmental and data analysts will tell you that there's a direct correlation.
What a wonderful time on the program today from what we are seeing. This is the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue that is holding right here at the Nigerian Air Force Conference Center in the capital city, Abuja, where these discussions are going on. The theme for the year 2023, insecurity, politics and economy, is on focus, and we have quite a number of guests that will be taking us through this discussion.
But so far we have had the former head of state and commander of the armed forces, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, General Abdul Salami Abubakar, who gave a speech, and we've just seen the governor of Borno State also giving a speech and hitting hard on the issue of insecurity, which I believe the state has been the biggest receiver of the negative impacts of insecurity. And he has been able, to proffer viable solutions to some of these problems that have plagued not just Borno State, but northeast Nigeria in general.
All right. Well, let's link up with the program as it's ongoing. We'll continue to bring you from time to time updates on the program.
For my ministers, distinguished participants here and those following online, and so many of them, because I learned this program is also aired live on Trust TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This morning, we thank Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this singular blessing of keeping us alive and bringing us to this gathering. We thank Almighty Allah for bringing us from various destinations, and we pray to Him to take us back to our destinations at the end of this program. Your Excellencies, in the 19 years of this Trust Dialogue, this was my first time of attending such. Not that I wasn't invited earlier on, but this is the time, the day, the Almighty Allah said I would be here. And I would like to thank once more Kabiru and other organizers of Daily Trust for inviting me to this very important dialogue. I would like to commend Daily Trust Group for this initiative past 19 years, because it afforded us a forum to talk to ourselves, to dialogue. And I believe dialogue is the best answer to finding solutions to every type of problem in this world. Even in your own homes, you need to dialogue with your spouses and your family members to resolve issues. I'd like to commend Daily Trust and congratulate them also for having a Daily Trust TV that is reaching out to so many people in this era of IT, because we are not too many in this hall, but hundreds of thousands of people are following this program live. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that and congratulate our brothers and sisters who made this possible. I would like to recognize our most distinguished and very able chairman, a general. Generals don't retire, so you are not tired. You are not yet tired. I would like to recognize him as the main midwife of our current democracy. Because you are all aware, 1999, he singularly stood on his ground to ensure that democracy comes on stream in this country. And that's why he's still highly respected, not only in Nigeria, but across the world. And I've told him that you cannot be tired. In the next couple of months, inshallah, we will come together to pray for him as he marks 80. And before then, we pray he will surpass that 80 with another 80. Amen. I would like to thank you for all your services to our great country, Nigeria, especially as our chairman of the National Peace Committee that you led, and we all know what really transpired when that peace committee was put together voluntarily. And I am one of the members, and we've worked for 2015 elections, 2019 elections, and all other elections. And that's why we're much, much, much closer with our chairman when it comes to service to our great country. We can do it with any other work at hand to face the national issues. And I was not surprised, despite his challenges, not of old age, he was able to be here today. And we want to thank you most sincerely. I'm one of those who so much believe in dialogue, because dialogue offers you the best opportunity to discuss all issues and arrive at amicable resolutions and do it with any challenge or any problem. And I believe there can be too many dialogue sessions, not only in this country but across the world. But let's concentrate on in our country, because people see us everywhere talking to one another, and that's the best way of resolving all issues. Put all issues on the table, discuss them, and of course agree or disagree to agree, or agree to disagree. And I think we'll continue talking to one another, because that's the best form of solving problems. And as we all know, what wars cannot resolve, definitely dialogue resolve such things. And what dialogue cannot resolve, no amount of weapons can resolve such. So I'm an advocate of dialogue, and I will not get tired, I will not be tired, inshallah, of attending so many other dialogue sessions that are directly involved with peace and security development of our great country. And that's why when I saw the topic today for this 19th dialogue on the politics of 2023, economy and insecurity, I'm only concerned more about insecurity, because that is the main problem that can bring a very big roadblock to any economy or any politics anywhere in the world. Because without security, you can't have anything. And I think I'm happy some of the points I was just noting, or when I was seated there, the governor of Borno State, who had to leave, made mention of some of the points. The importance of security in our lives. And I've said it so many times at so many fora. You cannot do anything without security. You cannot even worship God Almighty the way you want to, the way He ordered you to, without security. For me, without security, you cannot have anything. You can't develop. And when you can't develop, you are static. Of course, you know what that means. And I think it's important for us, whenever we're talking of insecurity, we put on the table exactly what we mean by insecurity. And across the world, for some of us that were opportune or privileged to be in the most destabilized regions of the world for 3 years, working as a military advisor. By my military background, I know what insecurity is about. But when I was a military advisor in Pakistan, 2003 to 2006, I was covering Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, and the Gulf states. And all of you know, up to now, those are the areas where you have these serious challenges of insecurity. And I think it's important for us, as we talk to ourselves, we talk with honesty and truthfulness. 2 days ago, we were in Kano for the Sardauna Memorial Lecture. I was there. From there, I came here to attend this program. And by next week, again, inshallah, we'll have another session in Abuja here, the Northern Traditional Rulers, with our retired or past security leaders, our stakeholders, our senior elder statesmen, to talk about insecurity again, especially affecting the northern states. And I think at that forum too, we will discuss some of these issues. So, like I've said, we will not get tired of talking to one another. We cannot get tired. We must not get tired of talking to one another, because once we come together at any particular forum, it gives hope to the common man that the leaders are talking. Even if nothing comes out of the hall, they still believe something will definitely come out later on. And in a forum like this, you have politicians. We are not politicians. You have politicians, you have statesmen. You have the common man that feels the pinch of the wrong policies of the politicians. The chairman of the occasion talked about the problems of poverty. Even Malan Kabir talked about the poverty level in the country and other challenges. And that's why we keep on bringing such attention to the authorities, to our political leaders. And political leaders should know, when we talk about some of these issues, which some of them have said worse things, we are not challenging them, we are not criticizing them. We're only telling them what the masses feel, what the masses want from them, because leadership is a trust from Allah, and you will account for that single leadership He gave you when you meet Him. I won't be there. It's only you and Almighty Allah. And that's how we bring our leaders' attention to what they should do. And when we do that, we're happy, we have told them the truth. So politicians should not see comments being made as challenging them, challenging their authorities. No. We are only concerned about the common man. Please do this and this and this for the common man, for the sake of this country. We don't criticize people. We only critique some of the activities of these leaders. And I think it's important for us to know that we are not in competition with the political leaders as traditional and religious leaders. For some of us, we have double problems on our heads: traditional leadership and religious leadership. And we only pray to Almighty Allah every morning, every afternoon, every minute, every second, for Allah to guide us to discharge our responsibilities. And when we do that, alhamdulillah, we're always happy. I'm always happy when I say things out, take them off my chest at a forum like this, and at so many other fora where I spoke. And I think it's important for us to know, yes, security is the most important, I've said it, but what do we do with the insecurity? We advise. Some of you are leaders, but I don't think there's anybody here who can actually bring any solution to the insecurity problem, because you are not the commander-in-chief, you are not the service chiefs, you are not the National Assembly members, you are not elected officials, you are not governors. So what we do in our own positions to advise these our leaders, because we recognize 100% they are our leaders, because Allah gives leadership to whom He wants, at the time He wants, And he'll take it away from you at the time he wants. He won't even ask you. So let's always try to do right. We should do our best and leave the rest to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because whatever you do, Allah sees you, Allah hears you, and definitely you will account for this. So at a forum like this, we bring attention of our leaders to always try to be good and to do good to all manners of people. We must tell ourselves the home truth. When there are problems, we should say, yes, there are problems. And when somebody has done something good, commend him so that he will continue to do better things. If the government has done something good, say, yes, this is very good, well done. They have done something negatively, say, no, this is not what's supposed to be done, and they will have to apply the brakes, look at the issues, and then take another direction. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody makes mistakes. So we'd like to have this dialogue on and on, and we'd like to pray to Almighty Allah to allow us to see so many of such dialogue sessions, and let's have more and more. Let's continue talking. And like I've said, the more we sit down and talk, the more answers keep on flowing into our heads and into our brains. But people ask, after all the dialogue sessions we've been having over the years, what have been happening to all those external resolutions that were arrived at? Why don't you implement those things that we have arrived at? They are good for us as a country, as a people, whether Christians, Muslims, animists, and whatever. Why don't we implement resolutions at our various meetings? These are questions that we have to continue to ask our leaders. And you cannot be a leader if you are selfish. In Kano, I told the audience here in Kano that Sardauna succeeded as a leader because all what he did was based on justice and fairness, nothing more. He was just to everybody, he was fair to everybody. So nobody could come and point a finger at Sardauna that you malign me or you marginalize me as a Christian. In fact, the first Bible Sunday award you got was brought in by Sardauna when he was working with him. So these are things that we have to put aside, issues of religion, ethnicity. I'm very happy our chairman brought these issues out. Even Malan Kabir brought some of this out. We have to look at the best qualities. The governor of Borno State just mentioned some of this. Let's look at what do we do with ourselves. How do we move this country forward? As soldiers, when we were young officers, being trained by people like General Abdulsalami Abubakar, he was my CDS when I was in ECOWAS, we know they said war is too important to be left to the soldiers alone. We learned that one. War is too important to be left to the soldiers alone. And now I'm also adding my own. Politics and national development are too important to be left to the politicians alone. We must all come together and find solutions to our numerous problems. Because nobody has the answers to all the problems in this world. No way, no way. Only Almighty Allah has all the answers. So let's all close ranks, come together, and see what we can do to move this country forward in peace and prosperity. I'd like to thank Daily Trust for inviting me and for making sure that I also attend by personally coming to convince me, not to confuse me. I was convinced that I should attend because of the importance of this dialogue at this time. 2022 is going to be a very, very serious year for this country because the politicians will start talking. And what we are doing here is talking, dialogue. The politicians' dialogue is to go and campaign and look for votes from the common man and from me and other people. So this 2022 is a year of talking. Let's have more of such dialogue sessions across the country. Because when you do sit down, you have Yorubas, Igbos, Hausas, Fulanis, Christians. I didn't mention Idomas and thieves. We'll all sit under one roof and discuss one issue, and that is national development, national security, and the way our people live happily. And that's our main concern. And we'll continue to talk to one another. And we'd like to thank you. We continue to honor such invitations at such forum to continue to say more on what we should do, what we must do as one people created by God Almighty. Once more, we thank you very much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a very successful program, and may our leaders try to implement and take at heart what is being said here, like the chairman said, as advice to them, not as a criticism, and look at what they should do. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And that was remarked by Muhammadu Sa'ad Abu Bakr III, the 20th Sultan of Sokoto. The recent issues that we're dealing with, insecurity, is on the front burner.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that as a traditional ruler and a father figure in the society, he approached, his speech from the angle of needing good leadership in the country. One major thing he emphasized on is the fact that for national development, for national growth and national security to be established in the country, there is need for good leaders to be put in place. Not just good leaders, but leaders that will set, put aside boundaries of ethnicity, religion, tribalism, and the likes, to work together with everyone in oneness and with cohesion. That is one major aspect of his speech that really sends a message back home to most Nigerians.
True, very, very instrumental to this discussion. And then after this session, the panel session will begin, and you will get to hear a lot of perspectives on some of the issues that we are dealing with. Just to give a rundown for those who are just joining and watching the show for the first time, the chairman of the occasion, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR, gave his own speech opening the program. We've also received speech from the chairman of Media Trust Limited, Kabir Yusuf, and also we have other dignitaries on the program today. Borno State Governor, which is one of them, Umara Zulum, who gave his own speech earlier on.
Yeah. And, from different angles, these dignitaries are going to be hitting hard on the issue of politics, the economy, and of course the biggest threat to national unity, which is insecurity that is currently ravaging the country. And it's important that there is a balance. We have the former head of the FIRS, that is Mrs. Ifwefo, who is coming in to speak from the economic angle. And of course, we are honored to have the presence of the former head of state, that is General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who will also be sharing his deep knowledge with people around here today on the matter of insecurity, having led so many delegations that brought peace to countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and even in Nigeria here. He was very instrumental in the transition of the Nigerian government from the military regime to the democracy that we now enjoy as a country.
Very correct. All right, let's join back the program. The panel discussion is about to begin, so let's take a look.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please, all courtesies duly observed. I'd like to thank the Daily Trust for inviting me to be a speaker on this very important topic. 2023, the politics, economy, and insecurity. As I listened to the chairman, listened to the governor of Borno State, listened to His Eminence, it looks like we're all converging towards the same conclusions. But I'll still share my thoughts. And as I do that, I have some caveats. One is that as I speak, this is to acknowledge that achieving all we want is going to take a lot of hard work. a lot of collective hard work from all of us, and time. So as we talk about what needs to be done, please note that this is not a criticism of previous administrations or the current administration. It's a feedback of where we are as a country. I also like to use this opportunity to acknowledge all hardworking men and women who have in their own way reformed the country or tried to reform the country, are still trying to reform the country in different parts of the country, in public sector and the private sector. And whatever is said here is to add to that discussion. And what I've tried to do is a quest for us to step back, assess, recalibrate, and forge ahead stronger and bolder. Changes in the development of Nigeria have preoccupied me as long as I remember, and the chairman has proudly announced my age. Oh, it was, okay, just kidding. For the last 59 years. And it continues to do so. Some changes over time gives one cause for hope, but I must say sometimes your enthusiasm does get dampened. But yet we trudge along because it is our country and a belief that we have the ability, if harnessed right, to be great, without a doubt. Now, I've been introduced as the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and some may have expectations of a discussion on how to grow revenue. I did that in December, and I suggest, and I probably share that speech. This is not going to be about that, even though it will touch on revenue. But let me talk a little bit about revenue. And that is the fact that even in the 2022 budget, there's been a call that revenue generation is one of the challenges of growing the economy. And it is one of the challenges. But sometimes when we look at revenue generation, we look at it from the point of view of collecting cash. We don't look at revenue generation from the point of view of building the base, building the economy, supporting business, creating the enabling environment that will now enable enterprise to prosper, enable individuals to have disposable incomes, which then forms the basis for tax. Revenue generation is also about expanding the economy, growing the level of transactions, particularly where you are taxing on transactions. The more you have those transactions, the more the turnover, the more you are able to grow revenue. So this is not going to be a discussion on revenue generation per se. It's going to really be, and has been given, my thoughts on growing the economy, but also has been said, we can't do that without also touching on insecurity or politics. A thought occurred to me yesterday because I've always been wondering, how do we talk about a topic that we talk about all the time? If I go through my notes, we've been talking about the economy for years on year, and sometimes actually talking about the same things. And so I said, to make it real, let me ask my 9-year-old what she feels about the economy. After all, she has more life than we do, or should have more life by the grace of God. And just talking to her impromptu, her thoughts were, the economy is not going well. And then she went on about how salaries, people are not being paid salaries. And this was just off the cuff. People are not happy. There's no fairness. Talked about how people put up their family members and those close to them in positions that they have no business to be in. rather than using competence to drive that, and those who've been there serving. But she also said one thing. I shouldn't rely just on what she says. Have I asked those around us what they think about the economy? And I found that actually the most interesting source of information that I've had for this presentation. And so I started the research. And without any variance or any difference in opinion, you could sense people deeply unhappy. Along different perspectives. I went one by one. But those perspectives, in a sense, tallied with also social media discussions, platforms, and talked about how people are now feeling a sense of hopelessness. And I have here, for example, excerpts from the budget, what has been said. And I must say that we've improved in terms of transparency of our budget reporting and what we need to do. But again, as I looked at this, I said, this is not going to be another discussion of how we're using our debt, what the inflation is. And I decided that the focus would be on how do we give hope for a better tomorrow to the people of Nigeria. And my first line here is very similar to what has been said, that we're again at a crossroad. And we've had many such crossroads over my 59 years of existence. But things are indeed not as bad as I've ever experienced now, especially in terms of the impact on the individual and a sense of where the country is headed. People admit that religion is now a fallback position because for them, the only person that they can hold on to is God. And this insecurity itself is an outcome of a range of poor decisions over time that have also, beyond the other root causes, as has been identified by the governor of Borno State, but also poor decisions over time that have weakened the security forces' ability to act and defend territories. In fact, one of the persons I spoke to was in the security force. In fact, two of them. One was a child of an Air Force pilot who till now has been missing. And as a child and a product of the security, his attitude was, no one knows he exists. No one's bothered about my family. And for the security officer, the attitude is, if I die for the country, who would take care of my family? These are, they look simple, but very serious issues. And it reminded me of when, during the holidays, we traveled by road, and we passed through a number of buildings. And I remember taking a picture, and I shared it on the platform to say, what building is this? And I wish I could show it, but we'll just talk about it. Broken roofs, offices where water is pouring into. Reminded me of actually FRS when I started. And nobody could tell me what that building was. It was a police station. Police barracks, where the police, those who work for the police, are expected to leave, no toilets, no bathrooms, and then leave that building to defend the people of Nigeria. The reality is that there's a lot of work to be done. We can blame here and blame there. But all I'm doing here is let's identify those things that need to be done. But let's also accept that we have a huge amount of work to do. And then in doing that, step back and say, but what's the strategy for doing it? Otherwise, we're going to go on and go round in circles. And I have here a few thoughts. I've been given only 15 minutes, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Perhaps in the dialogue I will. But these are one of my few thoughts, very broadly. Number one, what is the economy in the real sense? An economy, as may be defined in different places, a large set of interrelated production and consumption activities that aid in determining how scarce resources, you can never have enough resources, are located. In an economy, the production and consumption of goods and services are used to fulfill the needs of those living and operating within it. So the operating word is to fulfill needs. So what needs are we referring to? But I'll come to that. Another buzzword that we always use is globalization. And what, in my view, globalization brings, and it has its own strengths, is the ability to run a global economy so that production can be anywhere, to feed consumption anywhere, and meet the needs anywhere. And technology enables the ability to bridge territories instantaneously, bringing the world or Nigeria closer. But technology works more in a setting where the basics are already in place. And as we saw during COVID-19, certain people could continue going in school, but just a small fraction. Many could not continue because they are not connected, or data is expensive, or they do not have the gadgets. So even with globalization and with technology, issues that were already on the table, that we already needed to grapple with, is even making the gulf even wider. And therefore, we need to address this as quickly as possible. Now, for those in the management space, or those who have encountered this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is as true today as it was 80 years ago in 1943, when he first wrote his paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. And in that hierarchy, at the very bottom are the physiological needs of food, water, warmth, and rest. The next layer of need is safety, before you now go up to the level of self-actualization. So technology is an enabler to drive these changes, but it cannot substitute for the leadership ability to provide food, water, warmth, and rest. Another thought I'd like to share is that most times when we discuss the economy, our reference point is how government raises revenue. And many a time I've made presentations and I have excerpts of the National Development Plan and so on, very well put together, I must say. But the challenge has always been on execution. And perhaps, how do we structure the economy, our country, to drive this? And we talk about assumptions. We've talked about inflation. One of the speakers talked about inflation going down. But that's not what I heard in terms of how it impacts the people. In today's market in Abuja, a mudu of white gari is 450 naira, from 150 naira in the last 2 years. A mudu of rice that they don't really like, they call it yama rice, is now about 850 naira a mudu. It was 150 naira the last 2-3 years. If you are lucky and you happen to get to market at the right time, palm oil, the original, is now 800 naira for a bottle from 200 naira. Things are tough. And it is so tough, and I must say it was even an eye-opener to me, and I'll come to my other thought process, which I'll close with, that I was told that, and I thought they were joking, and they say it's true. And that shows the level of disconnect. Because if I had not gone through that process, I would come here presenting and not be able to know. that in the villages, and perhaps even in certain cities, people actually just boil water to give the impression that they are cooking food. But they actually just want to drink water and not be held responsible for not providing for their family. As I look at our country and I say, what strategy? What structure? And I say this because for years I have loved road travel. I learn more from road travel. But one thing road travel has done for me is to explore the vastness of Nigeria and the difficulty to sit at the center and drive change at the village level. It's tough for different reasons. We don't understand it, but it's also just too much work to be done. And we do not have the sheer number of people to do it, and I don't even think the Constitution expected the center to do that. The Constitution expected the center to set policy, to create an enabling environment, to drive incentives and grow the country through private sector and creating an enabling environment so that you attract money, you attract wealth. But I've thought about, but why has it been so difficult for us to do these things? And I'm beginning to, in my mind, say that perhaps within Nigeria itself, we have at least 5 civilizations or societies. The society at the village economy level, the typical town or city economy, the mega town, the Lagos, Abuja, Kano economy, different from the smaller city. And then those who've lived in African cities who bring to bear other African cities that have certain level of order and expect to replicate exactly that in Nigeria without considering our own realities. And then we have the Western style economy, which is influenced by the larger multilateral institutions, driven by their mindsets of how we should grow the economy. And in all this, the point at which your resources are, the point at which our people are, is at the village level. But what do we have at the village level? What do we have at that level? We have people who don't want to go to the village anymore. We have people who, once they leave the village, they don't want to go back. We have abandoned lands, farmlands of our grandfathers, our ancestors, which have been taken over by people who see the value, but none of them are from the area, so they don't even understand. And sometimes it's just cash to take out, but not sustainable development, as has been said. Many years ago, and I'll leave with this, my great-grandfather, his name is Oviawe, didn't want my grandfather to go to school. And when I was told this story, it was more like, can you imagine your great-grandfather didn't want you to go to school? You know? But he fought it. And why did he fight it? He felt that what was going on was going to become the abandonment of the village. You know, in retrospect, he was right. Because what we have done is that we have now taken education, not the Nigerian style education, not a community type education, education that has come from a Western style economy, to educate those in the village, to show as if the Western style is better. We do not know the resources we have. We do not value our strengths. And unfortunately, what insecurity is now doing, it's worsening it. Because people are now fleeing the villages. Those that were left growing the food are now fleeing because of insecurity, worsening the economic situation. And yet we know the root causes are that they too want justice. They too want opportunity. They too want opportunity and equality. So here we are moving round and round, not really making that mega change that this country is so capable of. And I think I could go into more details when we speak. Two things will be very critical to moving us forward. One is education. Our educational system at all levels, not the kind that we have been practicing, because the kind we have been practicing has just helped accentuate the divides. We hanker after things that we don't produce. We don't produce those things ourselves. And then we leave the country in the quest for basic needs with skills that the other countries like. But guess what? We plateau when we leave the country because we never reach that hierarchy of Maslow, which is self-actualization. And so we now come back to Nigeria hoping to get it, but we're not ready to accept those that have left, because why did you leave us behind? And so we are therefore not collectively taking advantage of any strength. We let people go, we stay here, we have all issues that we're raging with, and at the end of the day, we're looking at our country, we're complaining, and nothing is going on. We have also not built an educational system that encourages thinking, that encourages productivity, that encourages creativity, innovation, and valuing what we have. We've not encouraged an educational system that encourages people to look at the village with pride. We do not have an educational system that recognizes that the greatness can be here. But that's because people don't see fairness, they don't see justice. Women will tell you, as a group, it's tough to be in Nigeria. It's tough to be in Africa. We have not built an educational system that values women in the real sense of it, that recognizes who they are, who the men are, and collectively work to build this country. We have not built an educational system that recognizes ages, that the young are just as valuable as the old, that the old are also just as valuable as those in the middle. We retire people, but we no longer value them, even though they have such a wealth of experience to give. We have not built an educational system that understands those words that we use that are important for us. Fairness, what is fairness? We interpret it the way we want. Justice, what is justice? We interpret it the way we want. Transparency, what is it? And when we say empowerment, there are so many degrees of empowerment. Our educational system, honestly, needs significant change. And last but not the least, to drive these changes do not just happen. Every reform, every transformation, every change starts with the leadership. One leadership, but beyond that one, collectively moving a whole swell of, because one person cannot do it alone. We need to begin to choose our leaders right. We need to move emotions because it's a shortcut game. It doesn't serve anybody right by using emotions to choose leaders. It doesn't. It comes back to haunt you. May we collectively move this country together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Okaru, for that, I would say, great insights into some of the issues that Nigeria is facing. And I think we'll sort of discuss a few of them, including, the one that struck me, which I've heard before, but which you sort of articulated really well, which is that countries tend to fail one local government at a time. Countries don't just collapse overnight. And what's happening with our rural economies and in our rural areas has a great bearing on what we're seeing happening to the country today. So thank you for that. What I'd like to do is get our two panelists to respond, maybe just 3 minutes each, because I don't want this to be sort of a one-way conversation. It's supposed to be a dialogue. Just response to her, and then we'll sort of just get a conversation going based on your responses. Perhaps we could start with Dr. Rufai. I think if you could use the mic next to her, yeah, and then Dr. Hakim and I will share.
Thank you very much. I will actually want to say a word or two on the issue of rural banditry. Principally and fundamentally, we tend not to understand what is happening in the rural world. It's like we are living in two different worlds. the urban world and the rural world. And people living in these rural areas understands their problem more than any other person. One, there is a very serious misconception about the bandits. And what is that? We identify them as Fulani. Going by the number and the statistics, virtually banditry and the bandits actually cut across different ethnic groups. And in terms of percentage, there are more Hausa people, bandits, than even the Fulani. We really need to understand the Fulani cultural system and the Fulani cultural setting. Within their own perception and conception, if you don't have respect for the idea they call Pulaku, for instance, the code of conduct, you are more or less not a Fulani. They don't have that value for you. And not only that, there are Tuaregs who eventually become bandits. In Nupe land, we have Nupe people who are bandits. We have actual sense, no dialogue, and they are ever ready as we speak for dialogue. There are quite a number of them that are willing today to go for dialogue, and I think it is important. The National Peace Commission should really know this.
Okay, so and I think we will have a lot of people who would have strong ideas about whether we should be talking to criminals, but we will get into that in a minute. Let me allow Dr. Baba Ahmed to share his own thoughts regarding the theme that we're discussing, and then we'll start the real conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would just like to look at what is on the ground, the circumstances in which we live between now and 2023, and what needs to be done. I would like to advise that we treat 2023 not just as an election, but as a major turning point. We're going to either save this country or lose it. And this is what happens between now and 2023, and what happens in the elections, and what happens after. So we're not just going to deal with an election. It is a major turning point. It can be worse.
generalizing issues. If you want to govern this country, you have to soil your boots. It cannot be just about the north and south. It has to be about every inch of Nigeria. We need to lower the rhetorics. We need to lower some of the things that we say. There are intimate linkages between politics and security. The disconnect that my sister mentioned is profound. The disconnect between the state and the citizen, it is profound. Millions of Nigerians feel abandoned. They don't think this country cares enough about them. And our leadership operates as if it really doesn't matter. This is what is in the mind of people. And when people feel abandoned, they also feel they have a right to take decisions and steps that they believe have no consequences, or they have consequences that they design. One of the key issues that we have to watch out for is the impending inter-party crisis. This is going to have a major impact on political competition and the manner in which the political environment is either heated or managed. It is going to happen. It is going to be a major development. The quality and disposition of contestants, kind of people who are coming out every day, because we have created a false idea that the 2023 elections is about Igbo or Yoruba or Northern. Just about everybody is coming out to say, I want to be president. That is very dangerous for this country. They have cheapened this country. If you look at the kind of candidates who are coming out to say, I want to be president, simply because you said it's going to be an Igbo person or Yoruba person, it has to be another. It's frightening. This country doesn't need an ethnic president. It needs a president who can actually physically turn this country around. That's what we need. But because we have lowered the bar, look at the kind of people who are coming out to say, I want to be president. That is very dangerous and very bad for this country. There are a number of things we must avoid. The population census being planned by this administration in this year, so close to the elections. We have to watch out for this and find a way around it. The potential for deeper polarization between communities in the southern part of the country, between the north and the east, is very serious. So what can be done? We have to treat, as I said, 2023 as a major turning point. And this administration must commit to deeper interest in securing the country. It is not, what they're doing is not enough. It's just simply not doing enough. We're not fighting banditry enough. We're not fighting kidnapping enough. We're not paying attention to the kind of issues that will have a major impact on the way the politics will build up in 2023. It cannot just be the case that President Buhari's administration will sit its time out. 1 year is a long time in the history of a country, particularly a country going through a crisis. So it's got to show more empathy. It's got to pay attention to issues about constitutional amendment, about the reforms of the electoral process, about the way Nigerians feel about each other. It is his business. It cannot be somebody else's. The media needs to be restrained. If it cannot apply professional checks and balances on itself, then we have to find a way of it. The media has gone crazy. Sorry to use this word. And my sister is doing this. I know she wants me to stop, so let me stop. Two things. We must avoid pushing the citizenry to more desperate measures. We must stop. It's enough. There is enough suffering. There's enough desperation. A lot of people, just don't think democracy is worth supporting in this country. On our part, and I'm very happy that the former head of state and His Eminence the Sultan of Sokoto are members of the Peace Committee. The Northern Elders Forum has committed to reach out to groups in the South so that we can talk. We need to talk. We need to lower the tension. We need to show that there is a country worth fighting for, and we will do this. And we would like to appeal that any responsible Nigerian with any influence should support us in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Okay, so let me come back to you, Mrs. Okaru, because in many ways there are things that have been said here are things I've heard last year, the year before, and the year before. And indeed, even though Nigeria has never been where it is when it comes to insecurity like we are today, literally at every election, we've sort of heard turning point. We've heard this is it for us, we need to make the right decision, etc., etc. And yet somehow the political class don't seem to make the connection between some of what they do and some of the issues that we face. So given the theme of this particular panel, what I'd like you to deal with, if you could, is that nexus between politics and what we are going through. You'd already started talking about ways and means. If you could sort of focus a little bit more on that to begin with. The mic is right there, yes.
Right, thank you very much. I think first of all, one of the things we don't really pay a lot of attention to is competence. I think our hearts are in the right place, but we don't have the competence to translate what we want to, translate where we are now to what we want to. And I think there needs to be a lot more conversation about that. And that's why I talked a lot about education. It's not education of necessarily, oh, you need more primary schools or you need more secondary schools. It's the content of it. And education is broader than just, the real education is by doing. And there are certain aspects of our culture, for example, that people just don't like making mistakes. They don't like to fail without realizing that those things help to build competence. So coming back to our politics, we need to now start asking ourselves, who are those that are capable? I don't even want to talk about and capability from a track record, from what you have seen, not CV, not which school you attended. Because I see some CVs being, that doesn't tell capability. Show what you have actually done to translate from A to B and demonstrate that. And we should also not keep, lower our standards, because again, I've been in conversations. I think maybe one thing is we need to be honest with ourselves. We really need to be. But I don't even know whether that word is something that means the same to everybody else.
Let me bring in the person who's sort of been in the thick of politics here, yes. Dr. Baba Ahmed. So again, we've heard these things, we need to find competency and all that, but you look at political party structures. You look at the way primaries are conducted, and let's be realistic, two parties, APC, PDP, are the two leading parties that are likely to produce leadership, at least at the national level. And yet their internal processes don't seem democratic. How do we, in this 1 year that is left, find a way to ensure that their processes are so improved that they throw up the kind of competent leadership that you're talking about? Is it possible?
Honestly, no. But it's not entirely a hopeless situation. We can produce a good, competent president, provided within his party, he's the best. Meaning his record is the strongest, he's been scrutinized, he's gone through a very critical scrutiny by stakeholders, by everybody. That's important. So this is why it's important to look at those changes that have been introduced in terms of the manner in which ordinary people decide who an aspirant should be, who a candidate should be. That's important. The president doesn't like it, National Assembly don't like it, and they're going to throw it out, which is a shame. But if they do, if this presidency moves out, another president should come back and should look at it. But the most important thing here is ask any candidate now who aspires to be president, what exactly do you want to do with this country? How do you plan to address the issue of insecurity? Do you understand banditry? Do you understand the genesis? My brother here just said simply a fundamental issue. You don't even understand banditry. It's not about Fulani anymore. It might have started about Fulani, but it's about everybody. It's a whole industry. Ask the candidate, how do you intend to fix youth alienation? A lot of young people feel thoroughly alienated. They are not part of this country, and they will not be part of this country. If the parties commit to giving tickets only to the best, on the basis of the understanding that he or she, one, stands a chance of being elected president of Nigeria, and two, will do those things that need to be done. On our part, for instance, we have said we don't want to talk to any candidate unless we see him and his bad team now. Now, where is your team that you're going to transit, campaign with and transit to the presidency? Where is your Nupe man? Where is your Igbo? Where is your Yoruba? In your campaign. It's important. We want to see merit, we want to see competence, we want to see records, and we want to see a clear program that has to do with the way in which we will deal with insecurity, with poverty, with education, with young people, with secessionist tendencies. How are you going to address these issues? So it's important for our politicians to know that the bar is not as low as they think simply because we have ethnicized it. It's actually higher. It has never been higher.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Baba Ahmed. Dr. Rufai, you talked about rural and urban communities, and I think Madame actually went a bit further and talked about us having multiple societies, up to maybe 5. In places like Zamfara, where we've seen the worsening of the situation. So 12, 13 years ago, those areas had 4, 5 million out-of-school children. And these ones are the ones that have sort of transitioned, no skills, no education, nothing really to do, so very vulnerable to all these things. We currently have 13 million out-of-school children. And whether we like it or not, there's a huge disparity between the South and the North when it comes to certain data, which kind of points to where we're going. You've worked a lot in these communities. Do they even recognize government? Are they even interested that we're talking about politics in 2023? Are these things that are in conversation right now? Or they don't even know and they don't care?
Actually, if you go to some of these rural areas, they have no business whatsoever with politics. What they are after is nothing other than security. And we've seen instances and situations where they have absolutely rendered their lives to the bandits. So now, the issue of election, the issue of politics...
Let me just ask you to clarify. They've done that because there's no state presence.
Yeah.
And that's the only authority that is in the area.
Yeah, actually, in terms of presence of states in some of these rural areas is absolutely zero. Zero in the sense that you cannot find anything in terms of provision of education, infrastructural development, for instance, the development of all other infrastructural facilities are actually not there. So the fact remains that these are people that solely and wholly relied on what? On the bandits to provide them with security, with bandits to provide them with judicial services, on the bandits to provide them with even local and traditional governance. So the fact remains that you go to rural part of Zamfara, for instance, nobody is talking about democracy, nobody is talking about election, and going by the way things are moving at the moment, for instance, definitely election will actually be very, very difficult to be held in some of these rural areas because they have no business with that.
Mrs. Okaru, let me draw your attention to something you referenced very briefly, and that's the issue of the position of women. Because data has shown, and this is not going to be very popular, unfortunately, but some of our cultural practices, there's a direct correlation between them and the state we're in, particularly in the North. So, for example, early child marriage means that children who are children are giving birth to children. They're not educated, they don't have any skills. One man, barely literate, 30-something children, and then divorcing, and the women are not able to look after their children. So, how significant is it that as we approach elections, that politicians begin to take into account the population they like to ignore until they want votes, that's women, and start to actively think in terms of how the policies on women can actually have a bearing on issues like insecurity and the economy?
That's a multi-level question. Well, one is women is very important. Two, I don't think it's only women that feel women are important. I think certain men actually have helped promote women and ensure that, because they recognize the role women play in the economy. And I think, for me, that's really the stress, because I think we undervalue the role women play. Women are fantastic multitaskers. Women are extremely more focused, less distracted. So there are certain strengths that the country itself is losing, not just because they are women, but because they bring those strengths to bear. So it's extremely important. Now, I also feel that it's not just the politicians. So I think the politicians need to, in the selection process that Dr. Baba Ahmed was talking about, must necessarily include capable women, and they are there. They are there in the parties, they are there in the country, must include capable women, must ensure that there's a reasonable number for it to be worthwhile. So we're not discussing just one or two, and research has shown that the more women you have driving governance, whether it's at the private sector or the public sector, you actually prosper. Now, going back to the issue of traditional practices, I must say that you've touched an issue that we could spend the whole day on, because the traditional practices are actually not just against women. The traditional practices are against progress. And let me talk about, so beyond the issue, so if you take issues of child marriage, for example, sometimes you find people not able to speak out because of the tradition. And in not speaking out, they bottle up so many things, and that now becomes habit. Now, move that to private sector, move that to boards, move that to issues like this. A lot of people don't speak up. So child marriage is just one of several other things that drive the fact that we are not giving people the freedom that they need to be able to be the best that they can. Let me give another example of a cultural practice, and I'm going to deviate a bit from women and talk about it generally. And that is the fact that we talk about enforcement, for example. Okay, so even if you put a law in place to help promote women, I don't think our tradition or the way we have practiced things, men and women alike, actually understand what enforcement is about. We beg. We never want to see things to a rational conclusion. And those are things we need to examine. Why? So there's a lot in our culture but that's not something to do in 1 year. That's just something we just keep encouraging over time.
Okay, and I'll come back to other things, but I'd like to start bringing in members of the audience, starting with His Excellency, the former Vice President of Nigeria, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Sir, your comments, please.
Yeah, this is really an ambush, and the chairman of the occasion, Your Eminence, the Sultan, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, particularly the panel of discussants, when Kabir and Manir Dangali went to visit me to invite me to this, dialogue, I told them that I would only accept to come provided that I am not asked to speak. And that was the understanding, only for me now to be ambushed. Of course, all what I can say is that I tend to endorse, the discussions that are going on at the moment. I have not seen this country in serious challenges to its existence as I see at this point in time. I have witnessed the Nigerian civil war. Not even that civil war has rocked the existence of the country as, we are witnessing today. And of course, all attention is focused on the political class, simply because it's a political dispensation, it's a democracy, and therefore the solutions to all the problems that have been highlighted, particularly the security or insecurity, economy, and so on and so forth, are challenges that the politicians are expected to come and be confronted with, and also to find solutions to them. But the politicians alone don't govern. They govern together with other sectors of the public. They govern together with the private sector. They govern together with the security agencies and so on and so forth. And what is therefore required, like Dr. Baba Ahmed said, is the identification of a capable leadership by the political parties or the political class, that can bring together all components of this country together, and also the competencies that are available so that we can get out of this crisis. I am optimistic simply because we have had the experience of coming out of more serious, crisis than this. General Abdul Salam and others who have fought the war, they know that we have lost more than 1 million people. That is the most tragic event in this country. Therefore, we have the capacity to pull out this country out of present predicament, provided, we have the right kind of leadership. I believe that we can do it, and we have the ability and the capacity to do it. I have listened to the contributions so far made about education, about unemployment, about poverty, some of the causes of what we are going through today. Of course, these are correct and right identifications of our challenges. But the major constraint to these challenges is what was highlighted by Governor of Borno State, and that is corruption. Let me relate, my experience in governance. We established the UBE and introduced Education Tax Fund. And all this money is being channeled, to the states and local governments to provide compulsory education for every child up to secondary school. Compulsory education for every child up to is a must. Do we do it? Do the states and the local government do it? We know that they don't. Why? Corruption. So I believe that a leadership that can come and really show strong leadership on that issue, particularly of education, is desirable. So, therefore, again, let me also comment on the issue of the ethnic nationalities who try to make, or try to put obstacles, like Dr. Baba Ahmed said, making it, ungovernable in certain parts of the country. I think what we need to definitely, as he recommended, there is need, we lower the temperature. And what is so disappointing about this, all these ethnic nationalities are being headed by people who are supposed to be very well educated. And this is the disappointment, part of it. But I also believe it is solvable, and solvable only through dialogue and understanding. So this is a delicate, point in the history of this country, and we must be very, very cautious on how we actually approach these issues, particularly in an election lab, like between now and the 2023 elections. So let me make a pause here and say that I have been actually ambushed to make those comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. And while I'm trying to find where Professor Nazifi Darma is sitting, if I could ask you, the example of UBEC that he gave, Mrs. Okaru. Last year in this forum, we were here discussing the issue of a reconstructed Nigeria, or what different people call decentralization of power. And I'm wondering, to what extent can we rely on Nigeria as currently constituted, with a lot of power at the center, to actually deal with issues which are clearly starting in our ungoverned spaces in rural areas, where the center is too far away? And I think you referenced this again in your speech. So if you could speak to that while I look for my next speaker.
Okay, I'll speak to that, but I'll also speak to whether corruption is our greatest challenge. And let me start with the issue of corruption, because I think we've talked about corruption for so long. And when we discuss corruption, there's always a tendency to talk about it from the financial corruption part. I think corruption is definitely an issue. But I think if we focus on corruption as our greatest challenge, we can't measure it. We can't track it. And we need to begin to identify metrics that we can track and determine how well we are making progress. Because if I say, okay, between last year and this year, is corruption better or not, we'll rely on index of Transparency International. Meanwhile, if you want to talk about corruption, it permeates every single nook and cranny. So I think we need to start, and that for me is something to talk to the politicians about. Let's start talking about metrics that we measure, the same way you measure a business. So if, for example, we say to ourselves that we want to grow revenues, and revenues are not being grown, you can hold somebody responsible for it and ask them why the revenues are not being grown. If you want to track the number of convictions, so for example, for all the investigations that you do, all the people that you catch, you want 50% convicted. We can measure it. Because part of the issue with corruption is that we talk a lot about catching people, investigating people, but nothing happens. And that encourages people to not do more. So I think that, corruption is almost like drinking water now. And it is that pervasive. So we need to look for metrics. We should be moving towards, in 2023, clear metrics that you can measure, that you can announce, you can communicate, and we can measure your progress. With corruption, that's tough. Because when you talk about corruption with women, they say, but wait a minute, we're discussing financial corruption. What of rape? How many rape cases have gone unaccounted for? What of abuse? That's all corruption. That's moral corruption. So corruption has different facets. And we've talked, for example, take women, for example. I mean, I just didn't want to get into that women's space too long. A lot of things are affecting their self-esteem and self-confidence that are worse than any financial corruption you can think about. But are we looking at it? No. So we need to look at things that we can measure, we can track, and carry everybody along. Now, going back to the issue of UBEC, and the truth is we can't sit in the center and do things and expect it to happen at in the lower units of it won't happen. The way certain villages are the way it was 40 years ago. Meanwhile, when you move to countries like China, and I know Governor Bono talked about, should we use the Chinese model? But again, I've looked at the Chinese model, and again, we may want to tweak it, but we should look at a homegrown model. Because China has an advantage over Nigeria. Over 80% of the people in China have a homogeneous ethnic group. They're not as diverse as Nigeria is. So Nigeria needs its own model, and we need to think through that model. But one thing I know, this model of at the center and then dictating what happens to primary schools in the hinterland is not going to work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Friends, now, Special Advisor to the Senate President on Economic Matters, Professor Nazifi Darma.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Kadaria, let me make a correction. I'm speaking as Professor Nazifi Abdullahi Darma, not as Special Advisor to the Senate President. I'm speaking as a citizen of the country so that I can express my views freely. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, the issues that have been raised are very germane and are very important. But I want to just touch on two issues. And please, I want to use this opportunity to appeal to us to use our thinking cap and talk to those that matter and see what we can do differently. Economics is about reality. It's about people. It's about how you reach the grassroots. And the grassroots are not in Abuja. They are in state and in the local governments. Every day, every month, money is appropriated for local governments. The state governors take it away. I wish Zulum is here. If you appropriate just 50 million naira every month to every local government and give contract for renovation of minor roads and schools, the money will be retained within the local government. It will generate multiplier effect and income. It will reduce poverty. It will reduce possibilities for insurgency. It will create livelihoods. It will eliminate possibilities of individual women. It's unfortunate. As one Omogo Ikeri is talking, it's as if I'm crying. We have families, women putting fire, water to give semblance. And there are millions and millions. But it's because the economic governance at the grassroots level has been destroyed. And let us call the spade the spade. The governors are responsible for this. Number two, just a quick one. We have, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, a population as at today of over 218 million people, increasing at the rate of 6 million every year. To date, we have given birth in this January 460,000 people. Every day we give birth to 16,000 people. What are we doing to this population? What is our productivity level? Look at our clothes. All this is made not in Nigeria, but imported. We are exporting jobs. But what can we do? Yes, look at me very well, Kadaria. I am guilty as charged. This is imported. This is not made in Nigeria. Incidentally, I did my PhD on textile in northern Nigeria. What are we producing? Our military, our service, our all security service, our individual level. If we produce locally our textile and consume locally, this economy will reduce hundreds or tens of millions of people from the labor market and therefore eliminate the possibilities of insurgency and criminality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while I make my way to Chief Audu Ogbe, Dr. Baba Ahmed, perhaps you could speak quickly to the issue of the governors being the problem of Nigeria. Yes, sir. Okay, you're not ready. He will talk.
All right. Your Excellency, the Chairman, Your Highness, Your Excellency, former Vice President, I'll go back very quickly to what Governor Zulum said before he left here. Every month, we're here of FAC, federal, whatever. They meet here and share money. On the average, 200 million gets to every local government in this country every month. 200 million times 774. 200 million naira times 774. Every one of us in this room belongs to one local government or the other. When did you last go home? Did you see a grader leveling a village road? A small culvert? Did you see a water project? Did you see a primary school being repaired? There are teachers in villages today earning 5,000 naira a month. Teachers teaching our children. Children who will replace us are paid 5,000 naira a month as teachers. So when my friend here spoke about Zamfara, it's true. You go to some areas, there's no sign that there's a government anywhere nearby. And each month, 200 million on the average times 774 goes around our country and there is no sign. And yet each one of us comes from our local government. Now let me say something very quickly. We Africans are very good at copying. The white man has told us that democracy is marvelous. Democracy will never work if it is not the capstone of social and economic advancement of our people. What we are doing here is a fraud. Yeah, free and fair elections, yes. At the end of it, there are no visible changes. The widow in a distant village who is suffering is blaming one man in Abuja here, is blaming Buhari. But nobody blames the governor, nobody blames the local government chairman. And we carry on and there's anger in the land. Mr. Okauru made the analysis of the cost of food. We've reached a stage where farmers can't even go to the farm and harvest their crops because they have to pay bandits. And those people whom we call bandits don't see any connection between them and this country. They are so angry that for them it's a state of anarchy. We form our own government, we extort money from people, we torture them if they don't pay because that's the only way we can be relevant. So let me conclude by saying this. No democracy can function successfully if it is founded on a foundation of very turbulent and weak economic arrangements. And that's why we have trouble in South America, in parts of Southeast Asia, and in particular Africa. And finally, how do you grow the economy? I go to the bank, I have a project in my village, I want to do palm oil. And I want to take a loan and the interest rate is 27%. But the interest rate in Singapore is 2%. And in Europe, 3.5%. In some places, 0.5%. How do I build a factory to create a job to employ young people in the villages? And we have brilliant explanations for this situation. If we don't fix it, this country has serious problems ahead. And may God forbid that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief Audu Ogbe. And while I try to find Dr. Bashir Kofi, if I could get the panel to speak to two, maybe three issues that have been raised. The first, like I said earlier, the issue of governance being the problem of Nigeria. The second, that our democracy is actually a fraud. But finally, why are we not making the linkages between our behavior and the state we found ourselves in? What is the problem? Why is the political elite incapable of making those connections and therefore doing the right thing? Dr.
Yeah. Let me begin. A US president said, if I had 9 hours to fell a tree, I would spend the first 6 hours sharpening my axe. Preparation. What qualifies the current class of governors to become governors? How does a country of 230, 250 million people end up with the kind of people who today wield so much power as governors? There must be something really broken about our political system. Our democracy isn't working. It is throwing up the wrong people to occupy and wield huge powers. And this is something we need to learn. And hopefully we can factor this into 2023. Don't just give power to someone just because he has money to buy votes and simply move his way around the party and because somebody has anointed him. We will keep repeating the same mistakes and they will get worse. Our governors have 90% of our governors have no business being anywhere near power. And I say this because they don't have the preparation, the background, the competencies to be governors. And yet the democratic process says they have won the election. They know how to tweak the system. So that's the first thing. We have the wrong people wielding power over people that are desperate for new and effective leadership. That's the first point. The second point, I think, is that all too often, the center, Chief Adwogbe is right, we blame the president, but not the governors and the local government. But, sir, with due respect, the president does have a huge amount of influence over governors. He can rein in governors. He can exercise minimal power. He can exercise maximum influence. There are so many ways in which the president can influence the way governors work. There are federal institutions that can set standards. Is he interested? Does he just draw a line around his own and say so? And the thing is, governors are very good in reading the body language and the attitude of a president. Not just this president, but any president. If they think they can get away with murder, they will murder and get away with it. And I was for the 10 years I was federal permanent secretary. I've seen the best and the worst in the conduct of presidents and governors. I've seen presidents who removed governors, and I've seen governors who took liberties and did everything that they wanted. So what we really need to do is put the federal system on the table and ask, what is wrong? What is it that makes it impossible to reduce the powers or to regulate the powers of governors? Restructure the country. But this is a word that is anathema to a lot of people in power today. They think it is a Southern agenda, or people go and tinker with the Constitution. As we speak, I'm not sure that what is in the National Assembly will ever see the light of day. Huge amounts of ideas and suggestions and documents have gone into how to tinker the system. From the north, we are from, you and I are from the north. 19 governors, 19 legislatures, 19 judiciaries. The cost of governance enough can solve the problem of banditry and kidnapping and poverty and education.
Okay,
just
and at this point, thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Let's get Dr. Rufai's comments before we come to
thank you
Dr.
very much.
Bashir Kofi. Yeah.
The fact remains that I rather see them as the problem. Because when you look at it within the context of banditry, I don't think there is any state governor, his Commissioner of Security Affairs, or Special Advisor on Security Affairs that does not actually have contact of these high-profile bandits, if we are to explain it within the context of banditry. And not only that, the bandits have, to some extent now, trying to establish a relationship with these governors, simply because they are waiting for the raining day. And when is the raining day? 2023 general elections. They know fully well that they are actually going to make and play a very important and significant role. We've seen in some of these states in which The bandits were being hired to either determine who should get which votes, for instance, in a particular election. So it is really very important we should identify some of these issues. The issue of the negligence of rural areas and the rural communities is actually on the increase. And not only that, the bandits are really fully aware of this and they are ready to make use of this opportunity. The fact remains that they are doing what they are doing because we want them to do, and they are easily getting away with it. To the point that some of them today have said they are sick and tired of banditry, they are now ready to repent. But the issue is Nigerian political class are not ready for the bandits to repent. Because of what? If at all they are going to repent, they should please repent at the right time. And when is the right time? After 2023 general elections.
That is like a serious allegation, and I'll get someone to respond to that in a minute. But let's speak to Dr. Bashir Kofi first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Your Eminence, and the former Vice President of Nigeria. I think there is a lot of misconception in this issue of banditry and what have you. I can speak from authoritative position because I go to the bush. I sleep in my village up to today, and I know what is going on. And even when we were talking of some famous people like Dogo Gede, Dogo Gede didn't start the banditry. The person who started it is a family of Alhaji Muyaya. Alhaji Muyaya had about 100 cows, and he was exiting to Niger, where they usually go on. And then he was arrested by the police, taken to Mina, and at the end of the day, he lost 92 cows to corruption from the police, to something, and all this kind of thing. Now, what did he do? The balance of the cows, he bought one AK-47. Initially, he was not attacking individual in the bush. He was attacking police posts. So when he attacked police posts, he would take their guns and use them for other operations. And that's how he get Dogo Gede, who is also his cousin. And he too, he was stripped up of his sword. So what is happening to the Fulani? And then in the city, you have this Miyet Allah, who they call it Fulani the Idan Suyabudi. That is city Fulani. And they connive sometimes in terms of exploiting this kind of. But subsequently, now this issue of banditry come up, which most of the politicians in the country use this bandits one way or the other. And you see this, you don't see them just like, they are well organized. If you take the part of Niger, part of Niger, you have the Dogo Gede area in Katsina, you have like Adamu, Yankuzo. But looking at all this kind of thing, these people have lost hope because there is no presence of government in these villages. At one time, when we went to take 9 women who were raped throughout the night by 40 bandits, we took them to the hospital, and the doctors said that we have to take them for VVL because they have been scattered. And this is what is happening every day. And most of these villages, and also let the politician know. What I can't understand, no, it's very important. Let me. Yeah. So you see the. No, we can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for those comments. Mrs. Okaro, while I'm trying to get Dr. Kabir to talk, could you speak to this issue of the failure of law and order? Because even though we're talking bandits, situation quite similar in the southeast, for example, the abuse of rule of law and also the failure of rule of law. And then we'll come to you.
Right. Actually, I was going to request to actually speak on that because if I use this last example of Muyaya losing 92 cows, because these are the things that don't give people a sense of hope. What happened to that investigation? There's so many of those things going on. And those are the things that actually even fuel the corruption. People, because when you lose hope, you don't care. You want to grab and grab and grab and just leave the country and do something else. We need to get to the point where, and when we talk about leaders, it's not just political leaders. It's leaders of institutions to do what is right. How many convictions of police officers who have been involved in such instances have been announced? I've not heard any. Maybe others have. And it's not just the police. What's going on in terms of enforcement? We seem reluctant. That's why I talked about enforcement earlier. Where there is no enforcement, law and order breaks down. Corruption rules the world. When we look at faces before we act, we know we are families before you act. We know whether you are friends before you act. You know whether you are compromised or whether you can do something for me before you act. It envelops all of us. So law and order is going back to those basics. What is wrong is wrong. Deal with it. Don't let use emotions guide our decisions. You see a wrong thing, you check which contractor is doing it. Oh, I can get something from this contractor. And then you do nothing. So that becomes the rule. So this is, again, going back to this issue of enforcement. And enforcement and I go back to something else you said we should talk about. Why we do not link our behavior to where we are. We are all guilty. I think generalizing that the problem is governors or local government chairman or president, we are pointing fingers. We should all accept that we have a role to play. And enforcement doesn't start in the institution, it starts in the home. When your child does something wrong, deal with it. Not let it go, because that child could lead to something else.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me quickly ask Dr. Kabir Adamu for his comments, and then we round up with Chief Gabriel Aduku. Okay, no, I'm not giving you my mic anymore. Sorry, I'm holding it.
Thank you, Kadria. The chairman of this occasion, other eminent personalities here, good afternoon all, and thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words. I think we're at a point where we realize the problem. Virtually everybody that has spoken makes that point. We know what the issue is. So we need to move forward. How do we address those issues? Otherwise, we could spend time talking about the challenges, talking about the problems. And in that regard, especially in the field that I operate in, which is security, I would like to highlight the point made by Mrs. Okaru. Metrics. I believe government, our elders, our leaders should embrace the use of metrics. I've looked at the Nigerian security architecture, and one of the easiest ways to measure performance is through metrics. As a Nigerian, the only way I can measure the performance of our security agencies is in the fatality rates or the number of kidnappings. And so my consultancy produces a monthly report. Now, in the one we did for December, we did an analysis of the whole period, January to December, and it was shocking for me in Northern. I come from Sokoto State, and I was shocked that about 80-something% of the fatalities that happened in the country happened in the north. I was shocked that about 70% of the kidnappings that happened in 2021 happened in the north, and yet about 90% of the leadership in the security architecture are northerners. So why are we not holding them accountable? Who are they representing? They are representing us, yet we're the ones being killed. We're talking about it. How do we move from just talking about it to taking actions to stop the killings and to stop the kidnappings? I think for me, I'm advocating that ahead of 2023 elections, and I'm hoping whichever candidate comes to campaign to me would tell me how he's going to move from not just condemning all of this to how he's going to address it. And one of the best ways is to introduce metrics, monitoring and evaluation into our security system so that the market woman can assess the capacity and capability of the police by the metrics that is published by the coordinating elements within our security architecture. The Office of the National Security Advisor, the Ministry of Interior, the SGF, and the Ministry of Police Affairs, they have that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. And while I find Chief Aduku, panel, he raised a very important issue about the heads of the security services. CDD last week issued a report that showed that in the last 20 years, about between $15 to $20 billion has been fraudulently spent doing fake acquisitions of equipment, military hardware, etc. And they basically claim that this is because security and political elite have monetized and commercialized the conflict, making it almost impossible for it to end. Could you speak to that while I find the next speaker, please? Okay. Thank you.
Well, for me, actually, I think the solution to some of these problems basically are rural problems that requires a rural solution. And the solution to it lies heavily in the hands of our traditional authorities, only if they are given the chance and also given the opportunity to work. We have capable, respectful traditional leaders in the north, for instance, closer to the communities, and also have a knowledge of what is happening in the rural areas. If we can give them the chance to perform, they will certainly perform wonders before 2023 general elections. But unfortunately, I think it is very difficult for politicians to do that. Because of what? Because of the benefits. Who the bandits call political bandits. Turji, Dogo Gede, Ado Alero, and the rest of them, whenever you have interaction or interview with them, they will say, what happened to our colleagues in the city, in the urban centers? You ask question, who are they? They will say, political bandits.
Thank you very much. Okay, Chief.
Thank you. This is Architect Gabriel Yakubu Aduku. I'm the current chairman of North Central People's Forum, which is the equivalent of ACF in the whole North. Right. Now, last year I didn't speak much at all. All I said, Nigeria was at crossroads. I'm so happy that the past head of state is here. He gave his address and he mentioned it. Nigeria is at crossroads. Again, somebody else mentioned, that is Akim Baba there. Nigeria is at crossroads. Haba is enough. Before independence, Nigeria was defined. There's a map clearly. In our schools, we learned how to draw the map of Nigeria. You can't draw a map of Nigeria without River Niger and Benue at the center. Then River Niger and Benue was very useful. It was carrying slaves before, but it began to carry goods. Now where is it? After we kept looking at it and it became unserviceable. It gives an insight into what kind of rulership we have in the country. So in the summary that I have, in a paper which I'll give them, it will be published. It will not go different from what the Sultan has said. It will not go different from what the past president has said. And also others have commented. How can we watch our country destroyed by ourselves? For what? Some of local governments of that time, holding themselves together. I will specifically talk of division, they used to call it. We hold ourselves because a structure was put in place. The traditional rulers were respected and given authorities to work. We could count ourselves. Anybody missing from any family running away because of tax, they could get them. So, Mrs. Okaruwa, I'm very much with you and what you are saying. Let's go back to the grassroots. Today, we are lucky that we are defined. You have Nigeria, you have states, you have local governments, we have other divisions down the line, but more essentially, we have traditional rulers. We know ourselves at all the levels. Take the ward, just the ward. Every ward has a polling unit. Yes, I'll round up. But it's such an annoying situation that we couldn't manage ourselves. We have allowed it to deteriorate too much. So for Lord's sake, I'm suggesting that the insincerity and then the indiscipline that is resulting into this insecurity can be dealt with at grassroots levels once we establish sincerity and commitment to a country, which I can see that most Nigerians now are discussing about to restoring their country, which Gowon shouted up when finally he had to leave the office. Yes, so insincerity, indiscipline, which equates to insecurity destroying us. Let's go back home to our wards and make our wards right. There are madakis in the ward. There are gargles in the ward. There are chiefs in the ward. Take responsibility at those levels. And let's repair our country.
Thank you very much, sir. And I'm going to finally allow one last person to make a comment while I'm trying to find him. Mr. Issa Aremo, over there, right? Okay. While I'm trying to find him, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Malam Abdul Razak Abubakar Ahmed, Director Al-Hikmah Schools. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Oh, okay. Right. Mr. Aremu, you'll be the final speaker, so please keep it short. Thank you.
Well, I would like to adopt all the existing recognitions of His Eminence, former head of state, as well as the former vice president. Let me appreciate Mrs. Okaru for that brief, thought-provoking presentation. But you touch on one thing which I thought we should reflect on further. Tangentially, you refer to development plan, which you say, well, we have the plan, but it's never been implemented the way it should be. But if you ask me, I say it's the abandonment of national development plan. That's our bane. His Eminence spoke very well, went on nostalgia of those remarkable landmarks of the first pioneer leaders of this country, including the former regional premier. They did so within the context of national development plan, which worked very well. And even on China, I don't think the miracle of China is due to its homogeneity. China is even more diverse than Nigeria. We need to check very well. But the strength of China lies in consistent adherence to national development plan. China is running 14th, 5th development plan. Nigeria abandoned the 3rd development plan. So there's no framework to really do analysis. We're just agonizing here. There's no framework, no roadmap. As they say, if you fail to plan, you're actually planning to fail. So I was just thinking that maybe it's time for us to return to development plan. Then the last one is, and I want all the other discussants to reflect on this. For the past 3 years now, Oxfam
has been releasing the report that the combined weight of 5 richest Nigerians total about $29.9 billion, that this could eradicate extreme poverty among about around 12 million Nigerians. Now, with this inequality pandemic, in which the few rich are getting richer, majority of people, what is the policy implication for sustainable development? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Issa Remo. A round of applause, please, for all our contributors. And I'd like to give the final word to the panel, if you could sort of just wrap up for us so that we bring this part of the dialogue to an end. Perhaps we can start from you, ma'am, and work our way back. Thank you. Please, carry on. I don't, just carry on. Please carry on.
Can I give my time to him?
Yeah.
The gentleman. Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, he should walk to the front. I'm not walking back there. My shoes are
Please,
high.
you can take the microphone here. Thank you, Chairman.
But please be short.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, His Excellency, and the panel. My name is Bankole Uju. I'm just the project system coordinator of SEED International. My friend invited me. He's sitting down there, Empress Akinola. I just want to say one thing, just one, patriotism. If all of us can be patriotic to Nigerian, I think we solve the whole problem. I grown up in Kano. I work in Kano. And I cannot claim Kano as a state. I speak Hausa like any other Hausa man, but I cannot say I'm a Kano citizen. I can only say I'm from Ondo State because that is where my father comes. All my friends lives in Kano. I've never stayed in Ondo State for 1 month as I'm standing here. So what are we talking about? If we are not patriotic, we go nowhere. It will just be a cycle. We'll be running a cycle. Wherever you live, that is where you develop. And from there, we can defend ourselves, irrespective of who you are. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Pan.
Thank you.
And maybe we should apologize that we didn't make provisions for regular folks to speak. I do apologize for that. But we were trying to structure it properly so that there's no waste of time. Okay, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. And I'd like to just acknowledge this last speaker because I was part of the Vision 2010 effort sometime in 1995 where this same issue was raised. And it was fundamental also to the development of our country. A lot of people are born, they're disconnected from their villages. But again, there's a pro and con, but clearly that's an issue to look at and will help. Second thing I'd like to do before I round up is just to touch on my comment on the National Development Plan. This administration just put in place a 2021-2025 development plan. So I was referring to that as something that was a good step ahead. But you're right that planning is important, consistent planning is important. And it's something but it's not just planning, it's monitoring and evaluating the plan and using that monitoring to feed the next plan is really very vital. And in there, you have your measurements that you're tracking and you're measuring. Now, in terms of a summary, I think one thing is clear from all the discussions that we've had, not just today, but even in preparing for this. We have a great country and we're blessed to be here. The reason we feel very bad, the reason people are angry, the real people are getting desperate, is that they feel that there's really no hope. And I think that the role of leadership, and leadership does not reside in one person. Leadership is also all of us. But without a doubt, the role of the president is extremely critical. But we can also, in addition, as we push in 2023, to elect the president with the right capacity to drive and build this momentum and build this collective goal. We should also take away from here that each and every one of us is not about pointing fingers. We all have a role to play. If you have not gone back to your village to see what's going on and contribute to your own, it can be 5 naira, it can be one, it's not the amount. It's for us to start that journey. Then that's something that you also have to do. If you're running an institution and you've been nepotic in the way you've recruited, you've selected, you've not enforced when you needed to enforce, start changing that. We all have a role to play. It's the collective will of all of us to move this country ahead. While we look also to the political class for everyone that can to be involved and drive this country and mobilize everyone towards our desired destination. We are great, but we align those barriers, those limitations to limit us. Let's remove them and move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think mine is actually a short one. The issue of rural banditry in the Northwest, in my opinion, there is no military solution to it. It is fundamentally and basically a rural problem. It has to be addressed from the grassroots, from the rural areas. Because these people, we actually now classify it as terrorists, are people that are born and brought up in the rural areas. Unfortunately or unfortunately, none of them has moved an inch. They are where they are. They are where they were born and brought up. For instance, if you go to Fakai today, in Shinkafi local government, you see Turji, he has succeeded in establishing his authority. And up till tomorrow, Kachalla Turji has respect for the emir of Shinkafi. The question is, why can't we make use of our traditional leaders? Why can't we make use of these traditional rulers? And the fundamental question raised by these people is that the political bandits in the urban centers, I'm sorry to use the word political bandits, is actually a term borrowed from them, doesn't want them to retire. Some of them are sick and tired of banditry and are also very, very much ready to stop it. But their political class and their political godfathers doesn't want them to retire. I think what is important is these people should please allow peace to reign. There are the issue of the power mapping. Each and every bandit gang in the Northwest, for instance, has respect for certain individuals or group of individuals. All we need to do is to sit down, identify these individuals, let them talk to them. The problem of banditry, ladies and gentlemen, is not just about the issue of the military operations. There are significant part of them that are saying no to banditry because of what? Because of certain fundamental challenges. And one of the major challenges affecting the bandits in rural Zamfara today is the issue of what? Is the issue of epidemic affecting the cattle. The number of cattle dying on a daily basis is frightening, is on the increase. And the bandits are what they are because of the cattle economy. And today they have no access to urban centers, have no access to veterinary services. They want to say no to it. In conclusion, I think what is important is we shall please allow the traditional leaders, traditional authorities to play their traditional role. Not only that, some of the problems we are mentioning or we are discussing here are problems that were addressed by our forefathers. The Sokoto Caliphate model is still alive, and it is not late for us to fall back on it. It will resolve fundamentally most of our problems. Thank you.
I will repeat again what I said earlier on. It would be a terrible mistake if Nigerians approach 2023 as an election. It is not. We have never faced an event that will determine whether we sink further or we begin to float back. That's important. Two, I think people need to understand why sentiments are so pronounced. When people in the southern part of the country or some people say, we've had enough of this northern leadership, it must come to the south. We should listen. They are concerned that northerners appear to use numbers and voting powers to keep power in the north. And no one should dismiss those kind of sentiments and say nonsense. It's a democratic process. Only the vote will determine who becomes. We should address that. Why are they so concerned about the fact that they don't want a northerner to succeed President Buhari? It's a legitimate concern. When northerners say we want a northerner, some of them look at the problems. 80% of the problems we discuss in this room are northern. Banditry, kidnapping, poverty, insecurity, alienation. Northerners are worried. And if you have a southern president, somebody who becomes president because he's either Igbo, Yoruba, or South-South, and you bring him here and you say, sir, Mr. President, come and see, look at Zamfara, look at Niger State, look at Sokoto, look at all the killings, look at Borno, look at, so this is your problem to solve. The person will say, this is not my problem. I met this on the ground, it's not for me, it's, please don't put this wahala on my head. Only a northerner will fix a northern problem. Now, both groups are wrong. We can produce a Nigerian president, the type who will deal with banditry as it's supposed to be dealt with, deal with Kanu, deal with erudentism, deal with crime. The challenge, we've never faced the challenge to produce a genuinely Nigerian president who will treat every inch of Nigeria as if it's his responsibility. Treat every problem as his. Not draw lines around these problems. If we don't do that, and we don't elect a good person and a good team now, we want to see your team. As I said, we want to see your program. Contestants should say what they would do. Don't hide behind your party manifesto. We want to see you. Who are you? What qualifies you to be president of Nigeria? What would you do with the problems of Nigeria so that we can make an informed choice? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please help me thank my panel for that awesome conversation. Thank you so much. A round of applause for them, please. Thank you so much. And I'd like to now call on Malam Umar Abdullahi, the Director of Media Trust Limited, for the vote of thanks. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen and ladies.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have attended all the 19...
Hello.
Oh.
I just want to address an issue raised by the gentleman who came here, said he lived in Kano and he cannot be part of Kano. I want to draw the attention of this gathering. I think there is a decree. Mr. Bankole Ojo made a remark. He has been born in Kano, he is bred in Kano, he lives in Kano, but he cannot be part of Kano. There is a decree, I can't remember the number, by the administration of Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, that says if you live, I think, 2 years in an area, you become part and parcel of that area and you will contest and so on. I think this is an issue validly raised by this gentleman that I think the National Assembly should look into and revive it and make it. But again, I want to tell Mr. Bankole, in Niger State, in Mina, when I was a young man, an Igbo man on his own right was chosen as the chairman of our local government. Twice he contested. And I think that is a good example what Nigeria should be. Now, as the chairman of the occasion, I want to again, although somebody is going to thank the discussants, and I want to draw the attention of Nigerians. We have citizens' responsibility, which we as people are not doing. Let me give a typical example on our highways. You will see somebody going on one way. You will say at a traffic light, somebody will come and just abuse you, that why are you wasting time? These are responsibilities for citizens to pay their tax, to obey the rules of the law. Every time we say we are abusing the government, but we as citizens, what are we doing to make our country a better place? We throw rubbish all over the place. We go and defecate in an area which we know we shouldn't do. So I want Nigerians to take their civic responsibilities serious and perform it. In this way, all of us together, we can make Nigeria great. I want to thank the Daily Trust for this dialogue, and I will encourage other people also to encourage these dialogues, because through dialogue we can reach a consensus. Thank you very much. I want to, no, I think I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, General, for that clarification on citizenship rights. And I was saying that I've attended all the 19 annual trust dialogues. But clearly, this has been the most thought-provoking, the most sobering, and rightly so, because as many have observed, we are actually at a crossroads, and I hope we'll do the right things. And for bringing all those issues out, I'd like to thank everybody who's here. I wish I could call everyone by name, but I'll start with our panel of discussants, who I hope have sufficiently raised enough fear in us to do the right thing. I just wish there were more decision makers in this hall today. So, if you call, that's what I call her. I have known her for about 35 years, and she hasn't changed a bit. Thank you for your very sovereign delivery and your sense of patriotism. The same with Dr. Murtala and Dr. Hakim. Of course, Your Royal Highness, our Father of the Day, we thank you very much for gracing this occasion, the first Your Excellency. Thank you very much for being here the second time. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, we thank you so much. I hope that the discussions here today has sufficiently motivated all candidates at all levels to try to do the right thing when they get into office. There are many others here who we need to thank, and some have been so consistent. I think I said that I've attended all the 19 Trust dialogues, but there are others here who are not associated with Daily Trust, who I know probably have also attended the same number. And I'm talking about people like Liu Modibo, Dr. Bashir Kurfi, even Dr. Hakim himself, who was a discussant today, and Alhaji Abubakar Ali. I can see many others. We thank you all. For us at Daily Trust, I think the preparations for next year's dialogue begins immediately. And I hope we'll have peaceful elections, despite the fears. And we pray for the return of safety and security to our country. Thank you, Kadiria, for managing this. We look forward to continuing engagement with you. And we pray for the very best. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. A final thing, there's a closing prayer by Mr. John, but before then, the photographers are begging that we get the chairman and a few people.
All right. Well, there you have it. The 19th Daily Trust Dialogue coming to an end, just about now. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions, and from the various speakers that we have seen, discussions seem to center on the issue of producing quality leadership. And this is quite, germane, isn't it, as we approach the 2023 elections?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that the discussions that we've held here today have been very deeply thought-provoking. None of the speakers here today withheld their thoughts as to what we are expecting from 2023 and the role that every single individual or group of persons in Nigeria is expected to play in actualizing a peaceful, fair, and credible election that all Nigerians will be very proud of come 2023.
Yeah, and clearly from all the discussions, you could see the nexus between the political leaders and all of the issues that Nigeria is currently dealing with. I mean, talking about insecurity, talking about the economy as well, which have direct link, there. And so it's very important. I mean, issues about rhetorics that we see in an election year like this, election eve like this, because usually in election eves you see all the interest groups, you see all political leaders, elder statesmen, elites, political elites, throwing up all sorts of issues, in the air. And in the end of the day, it leaves us, high and dry, leaving Nigerians confused and all of that. So it's very important that that national cohesion is realized, as highlighted by the chairman of the event and even the royal father of the day, the Sultan of Sokoto, Mohammed Saad Abubakar.
And while we walk towards national cohesion, we should also not forget the points raised by some of the speakers in terms of creating an enabling environment, especially for the younger generation in the country who at times feel left out of the polity of the country. In youth inclusiveness in governance will ensure that we have a Nigeria that everybody will be very proud of in the future. That is one key point that I believe that the speakers have raised, and I want to also believe that whoever has listened, whoever that might be listening to the broadcast and is a major stakeholder in ensuring this comes to play will put their hands on deck to bring it to fruition.
I mean, talking about inclusion, we've also seen, several conversation about women inclusion in politics as well, and how that there's a direct link between that and girl-child education, especially in the northern part of the country, and generally education as well. The talking about out-of-school children, where you have majority of that in the northern part of the country, and how that has a direct link on the current security situations that we are dealing with. And also another important fact, which for me is very, very important, about rural-urban migration and about the focus and governance at the local level, which is very important to these conversations. I mean, when you do not have access to infrastructure at that lower level, social amenities, healthcare and all of that, definitely people will move on to the urban centers, and by the time they move, you begin to see explosion in population, and so it becomes very difficult and chaotic to manage, really.
Now that brings us to the question, if these people are heavily moving from the rural areas to the urbanized cities and towns, and now we have an overblown population in urban cities, a scanty population in rural areas, it also creates another sense of abandonment in the minds of people in rural communities, because it is assumed that there aren't much people there, so the attention of the government is not focused on areas where there aren't much people. They would rather focus on the crisis of overpopulation, especially in urban cities. There needs to be a balance between rural communities and urban cities. That way, I believe that everybody will have a level playing ground, and Nigerians will be happy.
Yes, and also issue of corruption also comes to bear. The former Vice President Atiku Abubakar also raised the issue of corruption, in the education sector and so much more. So all the issues are actually interconnected really,
yes.
And have a direct link as well. But this brings us to the end of Daily Trust Dialogue. 19th Daily Trust Dialogue. This is a dialogue that happens every year, is annual, and this is being watched live on all across our social media platforms. So you can subscribe to that and also follow us across all social media platforms so that you can have an idea of what's going on. It's a great event, really, I must say. In case you've missed, you can always catch up.
Well, I think this is where we draw the curtains. I am Chijoke Okafor. Thank you for staying tuned.
And I am Ayuba Ilya. The channel to stay tuned to is Trust TV. So thank you for watching. Bye for now.
In the headlines, police in Borno arrest aid worker suspected of raping an IDP who later killed herself. Another hurdle to cross as National Assembly approves direct and indirect primaries in Electoral Amendment Bill. Shiite leader sues federal government, demands release of travel documents. And in the foreign scene, first foreign aid arrives isolated disaster-struck Tonga from New Zealand. Hello and welcome to Trust TV News Update. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Police in Maiduguri, Borno State, said the suspected rapist of an internally displaced female who committed suicide has been arrested. Confirming the arrest of the suspect named Huzaif Adam, it was reported to have forcefully raped the deceased Aisha Umar at his residence in Maiduguri. Police Public Relations Officer Sani Kamilu said the suspected humanitarian aid worker rushed her to the Maiduguri Teaching Hospital where she lost her life.
Attention of the generality of the, let me say, the neighbors, after which the suspect opened the door. As the suspect opened the door, it was said that the victim came out crying of her virginity, after which she ran back and rushed into the room and was alleged to have stabbed herself with a knife. As I'm talking now, the suspect is with us. He has been arrested and investigation is ongoing. Details of the case will be known to the public in due course.
And Kwara State Command of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, confirms that a resident, one Olakunle Obawe, has killed himself over depression occasioned by his inability to pay his debts.